I actually argued with one of my board of directors that said, it's a great premium service. I said, help is not a premium service. Help is not premium. Period. End of discussion. No, we are not. If there's a line that we're going to stop at, because, the old joke is like, how the world's gone crazy, where's it going to stop? Well, my line in the sand is help is not a premium service.
Love that.
We're helping you save time, but help, the aspect of us trying to adapt to meet the needs of our clients, no. That we do not consider that premium. That is standard, because how I treat your mother is how I treat my mother, and how I would want one of my call agents to deal with. Listen, fellas, I know she's a lot to deal with. I know, but I can't be the only one that handles mine.
That's excellent. This is Uncommonly Remarkable. We have surprisingly casual discussions about the lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. Think of this podcast as an opportunity to learn something new and to pick up on an entrepreneurial tip or two through open conversation. I'm Artis Beatty. I'm a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. Welcome to the show. Andrew, welcome, my friend. Thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a really, really cool conversation because I have lots of questions about all the things that you've done. So again, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, we'll jump into a few things, but, kind of to set the background, we're going to talk a lot about tech rescue, which is really revolutionizing, changing the way people interact to get tech help. And I think there's some really cool things that you've done to set yourself up.
I love how we say like it's revolutionary, and that's where the part where it's so. I want to argue with you so bad over this. It's not revolutionary. It's common sense. That's all it is. It's common sense.
And I think that's fair. I think that's fair. But it's one of those things where there are a lot of things that you look at and you go, man, that is so sensible. It's the way that it should be. It just takes someone who thinks outside the box sometimes to get us back to those types of things. And, before we hit the record button, we were talking a little bit about the fact that the human interaction is so different today than it used to be. And people are craving a little bit of that ability to get back to human interaction when it comes to things like seeking help.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, there's just too much. There's just too much.
So talk to me a little bit then about Tech Rescue. If we were not familiar with the company, the idea, what's happening, how would you sum it up and then and explain it to someone who's trying to figure you out?
Tech Rescue simply is a 24-hour technical help support line. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You call 855-250-8586, and you get a real person on the phone. You have Bluetooth connectivity. You're trying to get skins on your latest adaptation of Star Wars, the Old Republic that got released. I have a complete story about 65-year-olds in this that will tie into that kind of idea, that kind of question where you were going. I could see it. But we gain access to your laptop, phone, or tablet, and then we take care of the problem right then and there. Easy peasy. So you get your time back. Instead of helping stop whatever you're doing, go and help mom with the printer. Go help your dad with, maybe a sports bet that you would rather be doing something else. We take care of it. Plain and simple. They call us up. We take care of it for them. We use a third-party encrypted source link that gains us direct access to the computer. Once that link is broken, we can't gain access to it ever again. And we're HIPAA certified, so we can also handle medical questions. So we can also help somebody, which is actually another interesting point. 14% of our senior citizens 65 and older in this country do not have access to any medical help whatsoever because of maybe they're the last ones of their family alive and no one knows about them. Maybe they have records that are misled. Maybe they are, in an area where it's not easy to get to. There's a lot of different reasons, but almost 14% of our population doesn't have that. So with Tech Rescue, we've actually worked with our clients where we've set them up with their Medicare information, which we're HIPAA compliant to be able to do so. We find who their local doctor is, set them up an appointment, set them up with an Uber, have an Uber pick them up, deliver them to their medical facility, have them Uber back and bring them home. And we actually can work with you on those prescriptions that get delivered directly to your door. Because we can now use technology for good and have help wherever you are in the world, we can help those people who don't have the ability to help themselves.
That's pretty incredible because, as a clinician, one of the things that we deal with a lot is patient access, right? And so telehealth has really been able to allow people in communities, places where they would not be able to actually physically see a doctor, or they can't quite get out to see a doctor, to be able to have some medical care. So having that access puts them in a better position than they ever would have been. The barrier, though, it can be the technology. So if you are a senior, you're at home, you're trying to use telehealth, but you're not familiar with the ins and outs, you don't know if your device is set up properly. Stage one is really getting those devices to work so that then you can access what's available to you. And so that tie together is really, really cool because, I've listened to you in on other shows. I've read some about Tech Rescue. I did not know that you had already started using the technology to actually forward for the healthcare services, which I think is phenomenal.
So our test pilot was in the Bronx. Single mother, 3 children, had a live-in grandmother, live-in her mother. Well, it's hard to take care of the kids, get to work on time, and also have that. So this was an introduction through friend of friends, and we got her a tablet. We had a prop stand, because every girl on the planet has 18 different selfie sticks. So we got her another selfie stick. So that makes now 19 or 20, however many now there are, because there's a selfie stick for everything now, but whatever. And we set her up from start to finish. She has her medication. She has her health insurance through a major provider here in the New York tri-state area. She has her doctor, and she has her local main hospital still in Manhattan. She had her Uber account set up, her pickup, her drop off, and she also had her prescriptions also picked up at the front desk by the bellhop, by the attendant to the front desk, and put it into her mailbox. And we had a full closure, so we had 100% success rate. And incredible. We knew that from that on, then we roll that out to the rest of the country. There's no way that if we can do it here, there's no way that we cannot do it anywhere. So if you have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or data, and you have connectivity, if you can see this, we can get to you and we can help you.
So tell me a little bit, though, about what was the impetus? Like, where did you get the idea or find or figure out that people needed this type of service?
So my grandmother was really big into genealogy. It was a hobby of hers when she retired. Like most grandparents, they all have weird little knick-knack kind of hobbies. Anyway, well, when MySpace came out, my grandmother became ecstatic with it because she could now find, because we all started connecting to each other, this is my cousin, my aunt, my uncle. We started spider webbing all this data, which was public. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was everybody started learning about how our data was collected and sourced. And one of the other things is that genealogy, the company, did the same thing because it read public data. So all of a sudden, my grandmother set her up with a Facebook, a MySpace account when that was still there. And we would always get, how do you friend request? How do you, there was all these things. So you would stop whatever you're doing and go do that, which was never a simple, easy task. Because even before she passed, going over to help her at her facility was getting in the car, which was about 12-minute drive, but getting inside, meeting her entire lunch, breakfast, and dinner table, same group of girls.
Yeah.
Same exact Same exact order. We all know that subject. We all know that dance. Then about another 15 minutes to get to her room. And then another 30 minutes of talking about her laundry. Did I have enough to eat? Did I speak to one of my cousins? And then what were you here for? I'm here to help you, grandmother. Oh, that's right. Now we do this. And then leaving is 10 times harder than it is coming in, because it's, did you eat? Grandma, I just got done here. She goes, and she'd be trying to hand you stuff out of the refrigerator. I'm like, Grandma, I'm fine. I'm about to go home.
Right.
So
right.
what should be like a 12, 15-minute job is about an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'm never going to forget the times that I had with her doing that. But
that's right.
At the same time, there were like that were kind of like, I had to get done. Like, Grandma, I really got to go.
That's right.
That's where the idea came from. So, but what sparked the whole entire thing is my father came into the kitchen and asked me and my mother, did we know how to forward an email? And we looked at each other and we looked at him and it's like, how do you not know how to forward an email? Now my father, of a baby boomer, grouchy, somewhat aggravated all the time for some reason, because everything's different. Everything is different from this magical day in his head. Everything's different, so I don't like anything. And he goes, never mind, I'll do it myself. I'm like, Dad, I'll come and help you. So I go help Dad. And I just sat down with her. I'm like, there's gotta be somebody we could call. There's gotta be an Angie's List, something. And so we looked, and she goes, so we were just curious. We whipped out our phones, Google searched it, kept Google searching it, there was nothing.
There's nothing.
So my mother pours another cup of coffee and she goes, hypothetically, let's say there were. I was like, hypothetically. She was, hypothetically. How would you do it? And that's when I went, all right, give me a minute. And that's how it all just kind of spiraled into itself. And what we noticed was where we had the desire is when we were going to and from different rooms with some of my grandmother's neighbors. That person had a TV connection. That person couldn't connect their Bluetooth headsets to the TV. And God forbid if they missed Anderson Cooper, then there was a problem. Anderson, I don't know what it is with Anderson Cooper, but I mean,
he's just got that appeal for that.
It's not just my grandmother. If they don't see Anderson or hear Anderson, now it's a problem. So that's how it all started. We started realizing there were problems. So, and when we really started seeing real quantitative data is when we started breaking about 100 phone calls a day.
Mm. And
that's when we started having actual data.
So it's really interesting to just kind of think about that scenario just in general, right? Because there are, with your parents, your other relatives, it's not that they're not technology savvy, right? Like they're using technology, and we find that particularly for things like in-office remote care, the patients in that generation love the technology, but some of it is harder to use because the things that used to be kind of, if I want this to happen, I click this button, they became less important and maybe hidden, and it's harder for people to find things. And I experienced this with my parents who have very recently gotten into all things electronic, and they're learning things and they're doing things, but then they get to the sticking point and somebody's got to come help them. I love the fact that that they could have a number that they could call and someone could kind of walk them through and figure out how to help them address those types of issues for them.
So, what the most important thing to that was in our standard operating procedure manual on the second page after the cover sheet in big red letters is every call is somebody's most important person. I would want your mother to be treated the same way that my mother would be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes us different is that every call we get is what we call a hot call. Confused, agitated, frustrated, angry, lost, you name it, we have it. But that's normally what comes in. So the type of caliber of person that we have on the phone is somebody that can diffuse a situation easily by first remembering who they are. So your information is pulled up immediately. So we use CRMs. So we use HubSpot.
Mm-hmm.
So as that call comes up, if you are a client or a customer, that information comes up. And in the notes that you provide when you subscribe to us is mom only speaks Farsi, or mom only speaks, in some cases in the United States, here in the tri-state areas, Jamaican. So, but there's two dialects of Jamaican. So we have that too. So, because when you get on the phone and you're speaking island Jamaican and you're a regular call center, that's a very, very, it's going to be a very confusing phone call.
Yeah.
So we treat that person the way that you would treat that person, because you're giving us that information. Like mom's sometimes hard of hearing, so you're going to have to speak very slow. That's on the information. So it'd be, hi, Mrs. Anderson, how are you doing? Oh, wait. And then wait. And then because that information is already there.
Are the vast majority of your clients signed up by a relative, or do they sign, or what's your mix of they signed up themselves versus they were signed up by a relative?
So so we don't contain any real information except just regular data points. So our typical age demographic that signs up is the age group of 37 to about 56 is that bell curve that subscribes. But then when we have our notes for our end users, it's in like the 72. Like
I see.
The bottom end of the bell curve is about 60, but the end user is about 72, and it tailors off to about 89, 88, which I think is where we're seeing averages in terms of life expectancies are. But since we've only been around 2.5 years, I'd like to see like a 5-year, 7-year average, because also that could also tell us that data too could be also useful in terms of where we see this major gap in terms of technology usage, right? So if we're seeing our end user, if we're seeing our purchasers, right? Let's say 42 to 56, right? We have a group here of a demographic of people that have cognitive awareness of technology, have usability of technology, and have teachable skills, really, because they're tired of doing it, right? So they're purchasing it. And then we have the age demographic in where we find that people are less savvy in technology. So we have that data where we can look at the two different demographics. This group that is teachable, that can teach, and this group here that is lacking. So that's where we can see where our age group is. And maybe based off that information, because we said we're allowing to disclose a lot of that data, maybe universities in different fields can look at that data and say, okay, there's this group of Americans or this group of seniors that are hungry for information but don't understand. So you can develop maybe teaching classes for continuing education based off of that data. See, data is just data. It's much like any argument in terms of whether, fires are good or bad. Data is just data. It's what you use the data for. That's what makes everything good or bad.
And your access to data, the things that you're collecting, I think you're right in that there are probably a lot of unasked questions that will have answers based on some of the data you're collecting, the information that you're learning. When you, as an example, if you think about where people are most likely to ask for help, what are you seeing there from a usage perspective? Are there trends for what people run into most?
Yeah, too many questions. Too many clicks and too many questions. when you start getting like 7, 8, 9, 10 pages in terms of the questions, you're asking too much where we're stepping in, right? Because now you're asking them to remember certain things, certain addresses, who's this, who's that. That's where things start really falling apart relatively quickly. I would say in the demographic of end users, 5 pages or more in terms of click-throughs of any kind, you're now going off the rails. And when you go past double digits, we have to start usually the process all over again. That's usually where it just ends.
Oh, wow.
That's usually what the standard operating procedure has been lately for anything that's like a major file, like when we deal with for medical filings that we have to do with. That's a very long, comprehensive thing.
Right.
So where we get the calls are usually somewhere about, when we look at the notes, is around page 5, 6 is usually where they've done it maybe once or twice, and they're just so frustrated. And people put the magnet, because we offer our magnet when they sign up. We send them a little care package, things like that. And this is all over the country. So we offer this little magnet, and people have it on their desks. We also have like a little bobble, like a little, it's nothing, but it's a little bobble that you just tap, like one of those old little Stockholm frustration balls.
Oh, yeah.
But it says tech. So you call tech rescue, or however they remind themselves, and that's usually where we're finding where we're coming in on the page, because we have to gain access to the computer. So we open up the link, we see where you are, and that's usually where we're usually coming in on, is around page 5 to 7 is usually where any real form is where we're coming in at.
Got it. So forms are a place where you get questions, problems, difficulties.
A lot of questions.
I read an article recently that video game usage has really kind of trickled into a lot of these assisted living facilities, and people are using video games. Are you getting any of those calls?
Yes. Over the past 3.5 months, we have gotten more calls on skins, on platforms, on expansion packs. So what we found, looking at the 2024 Christmas holiday season GDP, is that seniors made up 22% of the technology purchasing population for that year. And one of their main purchases was wearable technology, so Apple Watches and Garmin watches, which we've seen this pick up for Apple Play in terms of how it's been these past 2 quarters. And what they've also done is they've also engaged in more purchasing video games. So what we have are these 2 different school generations, right? So we have a young group of kids that do not go outside. They look at a stick and they have no idea that this one thing could be a billion different things depending on your imagination. They see a stick and they go, what do I do with that? We have a generation that has no idea about technology, but somehow they've gotten together, and grandparents for less than $1,000, because you can get everything for under $1,000 now. And I'm not saying it like that's a lot. I'm not saying like $1,000 isn't a lot, but what I'm trying to drive at is, back in the day, a 60-inch TV was tens of thousands of dollars. At Walmart, you can get a 60-inch plasma for $363. You can get a PS5 for $500 to $600. You get a handful of games, which is what they're doing. They're getting MLB and NBA 2K. They're getting Madden, and they're getting games that their kids are playing, and they're playing online with their grandkids when they come home after school.
That's incredible.
So at some of these homes, at some of these nursing facilities, we're setting them up so we can have your Amazon set up, right? So you have your Amazon delivery system, your Amazon, because you can hire people on Amazon to set up the TV.
Oh, that's right.
So as a third party, we're on their Amazon account, getting the TV, getting the PlayStation or the Xbox, getting a couple of games, getting the controller, getting the TV stand, getting the TV, and then hiring the team to do it, set up the day and time, and do it. We do that service. We're a carte blanche service. We're not a technology support company. We're a human support company.
Well,
Really is what we do.
And I think that part is just absolutely amazing, right? Because, because I think the starting point didn't include all these services, and then you started and you've just grown into all of these things based on the needs that you were.
You want to know how what really actually kind of started it was we were just going to do like the simple things, but then somebody called me up on my cell phone saying that they had a woman that was trying to do a project, something similar to this, but a little bit differently, setting up a home ring system and technology. And she said, I don't know how to help. I thought about it for a second. I said, wait, yes, we can. I said, yes, we can. And we said it. So I got two-way conference called in. I said, yes, ma'am. Hi, this is Andrew Bolton, the CEO of Tech Rescue. How are you? And I took over the call. I said, do we have access to the computer? She said, yes. I said, okay, we can help with this. And we did the test and we made it happen. So she was very, very helpful. And she called us to say that the package got delivered. She took a picture of it. She called us to say that the what was it? Husband for Hire, which was a local
handyman service.
Handyman service, came around, installed the ring camera, installed the camera and the button, tested it, and she called us and she sent a picture and I said, there we go.
And it worked.
We can do it. We can do it. If we have access to you, we can help you. And that was the idea that led to the medical idea, is that if we can do this, then we can do that. And that's where I think what I hope, not for the profit, because my mother donates a lot of our profits. There's a story behind that too. But what I hope is that if we can start doing a little bit of the opposite than what I did before in my past life, where we generated alpha for the sake of generating alpha. But if we can start doing some good while making a profit, then maybe we can start building the new formula that can start, because I think in my own personal belief, and this is just, and it doesn't have to do with business and it doesn't have to do with anything else, but I think in my own personal belief is that we've gotten very comfortable at making money the fast and dirty way. And we have everything around for it. Don't tell me I'm wrong, because take a look at what's going on around you.
Yeah.
If you feel good about any company, please. What I'm trying to drive at is,
it's a great point.
If we can start generating alpha or generating profit based off of users' wants and needs, which we're addressing, right? What are we really addressing? The technology is the catalyst. The technology is the catalyst. In the medical field, right? We're looking at a diagnosis. What are we really looking for? We're looking for our root causes.
Yep.
What do we solve? Our root cause is that we are completely disconnected and we are numb to society. So a company like mine should not exist. Why? Because if we were actually connected to one another, my service wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
It's the snake eating its own tail.
That's a really interesting way to think about it, because I think we've seen society kind of make these big swings, right? So we went from rural America to moving into the cities. We built really big city life. Then we saw suburban life start to happen, and now you see a lot of people deciding that they're going to be they're going to homestead, right? They're going to move out into these larger places where they have space. And it's not, I don't think, because they don't want to have human interaction. I think it's more that they want to be able to control what kind of interaction they have, right?
If you look at it, what did we do when we came to America? We pioneered west to get away from what? What comes around crowded. Goes around.
Yeah.
It's this. We're doing it all over again. We're spreading out. Why? Because we got congregated too much together and we've lost touch with what really is important.
Mm.
And that's what Tech Rescue is the fact that we're not just a tech support company, we're a human support company.
And so one of the things that you said a minute ago about you gave the number that you call. That's also, I think, it's important because there's a lot of scamming going on with people getting access to computers, right? So my mother-in-law, as an example,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
called
Yeah.
us up and said, "Hey, my computer was going slow. People called and said they could help me. Now they're moving things around on my desktop." Right? We've seen the movie Beekeeper with Jason Statham,
Um,
and and those are companies or scammers that reach out and touch the person, but you guys don't initiate those calls. The person initiates those calls, and I think that's a
yep.
security feature, right?
Yes. So we do the only outbound messaging that we do is our marketing and sales. And the only way for us to gain access to your computer is that you are a customer. That somebody, one of your loved ones, has signed you up for it and they've probably told you about it,
Mm-hmm.
or you signed yourself up. And the only way for us to begin that process is that you yourself call and ask for help, and you already have whatever it is open, and then you would receive our message from us, and then you would click the link, and then we would then gain access to it. And once we break that connection, we cannot gain access to that computer or that device ever again.
Well, I think that's key for a lot of reasons. From a safety perspective, it's key, but it also is a great thing for people from a communications perspective. In that, if I'm going to tell my loved one, "Hey, you can have, we're going to get you some support, but you have to call," be very aware that they're never gonna come and access your computer or call you to access. I mean, it just sets up this different thought process for the person so that they are more aware of what could happen.
And one of the things that we try to do as much as possible is educate. So anything that comes even across my desk. So on our social media pages, there's screenshots of my computer seeing our American Express company, email card, coming in saying, you know, a charge point of like 100,000 points has been charged against your account. And I'm like, wait a minute. And you look at the email address and I'm like, no, that's the wrong email address. So
Yeah.
we take a screenshot, highlight what you really see, not some pretty, design, which we do make our marketing stuff pretty. But my point being is that even I get them. And
Right.
if I'm getting them, your family and your loved ones are getting them. And we're doing as much as we can to help identify the people that are doing it and showing what to look out for. Because at the end of the day, if you don't recognize it and you don't know it, don't touch it. That's
Right.
the best thing I can ever say to anybody. If you don't recognize the name or you don't recognize anything about it and it just doesn't look right, don't touch it. If it's really important, they'll send it again.
Fantastic and super sound advice. So, it feels like you've been expanding the capability, the services that you are able to offer. Looking forward, what's next for you?
So one of the things that we're looking forward to next in this particular side of the healthcare side is by 2030, 2035, they're expecting around the third, fourth gen of smart health technology, such as smartwatches, which are supposedly supposed to have these microscopic needles that'll be able to read glucose and sugar levels instantaneously and then be able to send that data directly to a, let's say, Google Cloud type of service for your healthcare provider. Mm-hmm. If we can start getting, and I know data is this topic that is scary for a lot of people, like, oh, they're collecting our data. Yes, that's a scary thought. But let me put it also in another way. As data is collecting in real time across a mass population, right? Let's say half the country.
Sure.
If we start seeing recognizable patterns, whether it's food, water, activities, environment, we can start identifying key metrics or key indicators that can, one, help create either medicine or help create maybe regiments or plans or even procedures based off of what we see in real time.
Absolutely. And that was
That
going to be my
data
point.
is what
Yeah.
is going to lead to the future of future medicines, future procedures. So, for another example, we have these new heart devices being produced. Every one of those candidates, let's say, links up on a Google Watch, an Apple Watch, or a Garmin watch. Those electromagnetic pulses are now read in a very specific way because that heart defibrillator is synthetically pumping, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that do over the course of somebody's 10-year lifespan, 15-year lifespan, 20-year lifespan? Because if we're doing things synthetically, we can see what kind of data the body gives us over long periods of time, that maybe we can make better defibrillators, or maybe we can learn on how to keep the heart alive longer, or maybe how to heal it better. These things we will never be able to answer if we don't have the data to ask the questions.
I think that point is so massively important. In fact, I had a conversation a few episodes ago with a gentleman who we were talking about this very same thing, in that data aggregation will allow for us to make more real-time decisions around things that are happening than we've ever seen before. And so when it comes to your example of environmental things, so like real-time data on water or nutrition can be real things that can be used to help prevent large catastrophes and really help us understand what works and what doesn't work. Everything from being able to figure out where somebody may have picked up food poisoning and where that and if that's going to affect a number of people, to who's got what cold and is there a better way for us to treat, prevent, or vaccinate against, right? And so far we've been limited to having to do these long studies and kind of look backwards at things, but being able to collect the data in the real time will put us in a totally different position. It's actually kind of exciting to think about, but to your point, there are lots of people who think, oh, I don't know if I want my data out there, but maybe thinking a little differently about which data is there and how it's used can help people get around that.
So if you think about who is collecting what data, think about what is it that they're trying to achieve. If you're worried about your financial data, then worry about where financial data theft would be, which would probably be where the cash is at the end of the checkout line. If you're looking for, in terms of informational data, it'll probably be where you're scanned in, right? Because we're scanning you in, it's probably going to be where you're scanned in. So that information is what's valuable in terms of finance. What we look at, and I say the technology and you, the healthcare side, is that data we look at and say, how can we do things better? And what seems to be the problem, and where can we find the problem? Because we as a society want the best, and we want to be able to heal or be able to do things in a much more efficient way, right?
Right.
So we can't get there if we don't have the ability to ask the questions that'll get us there. Because with science and technology, we're basically trying to touch the next chapter in the dark, blindfolded. We touch something and get a little bit of a spark that illuminates it a little bit, and we go, oh, okay, like AI. AI is now leading us to quantum computers.
Yeah.
Quantum computers leads us to what? We don't know yet.
And so you're right, and it's gonna continue to evolve. And I think that as people who are really learning and getting comfortable with all the technology that's available to us, we have to be ready to see these things evolve and become different and actively participate. And so if audiences out there,
and this is where we have, have a very active team. I was just interjecting is that this is where we see a very active senior group. This is a very, very engaged demographic of our society. They are on dating websites. They're engaging in social media. They are engaging in online gaming. such as Fortnite, Battlefield, Star Wars, The Old Republic, they are engaging with a community that consists of a vast demographic of age groups across the world. We are seeing our entire, and this is not to say anything against our technology and what we've done, but the beautiful side of it is we have now connected a world in many different ways through video games, the love of whatever it is that you're playing. You're not going to play with everybody across the world at any given time. You're now connected to each other. So that's my whole point, is that Tech Rescue has been a living business case study of why we as a society are so amazing, is because at our core, we just want to connect with one another. Whether it's the love of music, whether it's the love of cars or bikes or craft beer or wine tasting or whatever, or sneakers, we have this desire to connect, and Tech Rescue is a living case study. We have people just looking for help, which means that they're done with bots, they're done with chats, they're done with the idea of optimization. At the end of the day, no, I want help, I'm calling for help, and I better get somebody on the phone. Here we are.
I love that. I love that. Andrew, if people want to find you, where do they look?
Go to www.techrescue.io, or the number again is 855-250-8586. And that's 24
awesome.
hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, I am actually very excited about Tech Rescue now, because I thought it was an interesting concept when my mind had it boxed into being able to provide basic tech support services for people who are reaching out to need it. But the fact that it's now that it's grown to really include end-to-end services and even healthcare services is amazing for me. And so I will challenge you back, because you wanted to argue that it wasn't revolutionary, but I think that this thing is actually fairly revolutionary.
I don't find it revolutionary. Help. And I'll tell you a quick story to end it. I actually argued with one of my board of directors that said, it's a great premium service. I said, help is not a premium service. Help is not premium. Period. End of discussion. No, we are not. If there's a line that we're going to stop at, because, the old joke is like, how the world's gone crazy, where's it going to stop? Well, my line in the sand is help is not a premium service.
Love that.
We're helping you save time, but help, the aspect of us trying to adapt to meet the needs of our clients, no. That we do not consider that premium. That is standard, because how I treat your mother is how I treat my mother, and how I would want one of my call agents to handle to deal with. Listen, fellas, I know she's a lot to deal with. I know, but I can't be the only one that handles mine.
That's excellent. Andrew.
But the point is that that's not a premium service. That's standard across the board. Period. End of discussion.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us, because I think this is absolutely amazing. And I really appreciate just talking to you about it. Your passion comes through. And I wish you all the success. And hopefully you'll continue to touch people that really do need the help.
We're here for as long as people need us. That's basically it.
Perfect.
If you've made it this far, then I have to thank you for your time. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed listening to the discussion as much as I enjoyed having it. I'd love to hear from you about the show, because we're working really hard to bring you great content, and the feedback really helps us get better. If you like what you've heard or watched, for those of you who are streaming out on YouTube, then take a split second to give us a thumbs up or a like. It really helps other people like you find the show too. And no one likes to miss out on the good stuff, so go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't have to wonder when or if there's a new episode. And until next time, stay remarkable.